Super Monkey Ball. It was a pretty good game. It was released in 2001 for the Nintendo GameCube, and in 2002 got not just one, but two new games added to the franchise. The first of which was Super Monkey Ball 2, a direct sequel which we're skipping over today, and then later in the year came Super Monkey Ball Jr.
on the Game Boy Advanced.
So how do you take Super Monkey Ball, right? A game that relies hard on its control scheme, its fluid physics engine, and hardware of the respective console, and put it on a 32-bit system that you play on the go?
You don't.
In all seriousness though, Super Monkey Ball Jr., it's good. Well, for what it is. Keeping things in context is important here. Yeah, nowadays this game looks kind of bad and doesn't have so much value. I mean, no one's going to sit down and play this game now when we have the console games floating around the market, which are much smoother experiences in comparison. Handhelds have always been a novel concept since the dawn of video games. There have almost always been cheaper alternatives on the go of the games we play at our homes, whether it be the Game & Watch series or the Tiger games to the DS, Vita, and nowadays we have the Nintendo Switch and the Steam Deck, which is like a portable PC. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
So let's boot up the Game Boy Advanced and check out Super Monkey Ball's younger brother, or I guess son. It's called Junior. Wait, what am I talking about again?
This game is not developed by Amusement Vision this time around, but by a company known as Realism, who for some reason has like zero track record on the internet. Just a heads up, but since this game is more or less a demake of Super Monkey Ball on GameCube, we are going to be talking and referencing that game a lot. In fact, if you haven't seen it yet, make sure to watch that review so you kind of know my opinions and takes on that game. It uses similar themes, similar menus, the same songs, and while there are major differences, is essentially a different view of the first game. I want to take a moment and seriously credit Realism for their efforts on this game. I was actually really surprised to see that it wasn't Amusement Vision taking the helm on it, because when you really look at these two games side by side, it's a genuinely faithful adaptation. I know not literally, but keep in mind one is the Game Boy Advance. The menus look as good as they can be, the announcer's voice is crisp and clear, the graphics and music are honestly what you would expect if not better, and in fact are really good, and they really worked hard as they could to make a solid product.
It's really hard to objectively review this game because the only serious issue is really nothing within the control of the developers, but rather that it was released on the Game Boy Advance, which it just isn't a console that really works for the series, and the company really tried, but unfortunately for Realism, it just wasn't realistic.
It's fair, it's hardware limitations, and definitely understandable. Let's take a moment here and talk about something I kind of glossed over in the first review, which is important to this game as well, being the time limit on the levels. This is one benefit to doing a series retrospective, since I can just go back and cover some things I missed, while still being comprehensive on the subject and series as a whole. This is also very important to this game as well, so it's relevant, and you'll hear why. Basically, each level has a set amount of time that you are given to finish it in. Some levels are given 30, some are 60, and oddly in Junior, there are like levels that are 45 seconds. How they measure something like that being the best for a level is beyond me, but hey, they probably have some sort of level scientist figuring it out. If you finish a stage in I think half the time limit, don't quote me on that, you get a point bonus multiplayer. If you collect all the bananas, at least in Junior, you receive a perfect bonus multiplayer on top of that, and a bonus goal will also yield you more points. We'll get back to why this is important to Junior in a bit, but that's essentially the underlying reward system of this game. Get from point A to point B, but if you play well, you're rewarded quite handsomely for it. This is a very underrated aspect of Super Monkey Ball, and considering the series started as an arcade game, is something I feel is very easy to forget on console. Super Monkey Ball's charm came from its fluid controls and accurate physics. With Junior, there just had to be cuts, and you use the D-pad to control your monkey. And it might go without saying, but this just doesn't work that well. It's unfortunately kind of sluggish, and without a minimap especially, very hard to gauge your character and exact movement. Staying on platforms, I feel, becomes much more difficult, and usually when you have to overcorrect something, it just means you die. A death in the first game is your fault, but here it's hard not to feel cheated or like it was really something you could control. To account for the lack of precision, developers actually came up with a pretty good idea, at least in concept, which is letting the player use the A and B buttons to speed up and slow down your character, respectively.
Yeah, so Super Monkey Ball Jr. on the Game Boy Advanced has more inputs than the GameCube titles. Now, this isn't like a complaint or anything or a big deal. It makes sense, but like, tell me that's not weird to think about.
I appreciate that developers thought to add this, however, I don't feel like this fixes so much. For one, I find it a bit odd they don't seem to mention it anywhere in the game that you can do this. This wouldn't be a big deal until you get to advanced level 9, game over, look it up on the internet, and realize that this is something that actually exists. Like, I've had conversations with many Monkey Ball fans who didn't even know this was a thing, and I cannot blame them. I feel like the game really should have tried to communicate this, being on such a different platform, but like I said, most players don't even realize this is an option. I also don't feel like the speed up always works the way it's intended to. Even with the speed up sometimes, I found it a bit hard to clear a gap where it was needed, and would die regardless. I also did find that it was really hard to correct the momentum at certain points. Like if I pressed A, I wouldn't really slow down even when pressing B after, and sometimes just fall off anyway, which makes levels very frustrating. The game kind of becomes less of a physics-based game and more of a tank movement control scheme to get to the goal. I don't think this is a bad idea. It makes sense on GBA. However, I do wish this was executed a bit better. Let me explain exactly. Lots of the levels made the transition over from the GameCube title to Junior, and while some of them are quite seamless and some of them were actually adjusted, I think some of the levels just don't work the same way that they were intended to, and perhaps should have just been scrapped or heavily reworked. Advanced Floor 5, and I guess Beginner Floor 5 as well, have the same bonus skull concept we saw from the original. But because it's hard to control, landing here is very difficult. I do understand the minimap was not realistic to include, so I'm not complaining about that, but something I think they could have done to compensate for this is by making the area you land bigger. It feels very small and tough to gauge. Time limits for this game feel a lot more strict. There are a lot more 30-second levels, and I don't mind this actually. Since the game developers couldn't do as much with the physics, they try to add more challenge from asking the player to finish a simple level, but do it fast. I think this is a good example of a more fair challenge to expect out of the player, rather than trying to do some wonky movement that the game was just not built to do. Gauging where you are on a platform becomes very demanding of the player. The levels where you need to get on a moving platform I find to be some of the most challenging in the game because it's very tough to tell exactly where the ball is touching the ground. Levels where you make turns I also find to be quite hard to play because they're like never curved floors. You have to make a 90-degree angle turn very often, which is easier said than done, even with a D-pad. This bumper level, which is a fun concept all things considered and was in the first game, really stresses me out here for that reason. My biggest example of a level that should have been cut is Expert 7. Why did they bring this back of all things? Was this like an inside joke or something? Well, I could power through on GameCube. This is about the extent of where I can make it on the Game Boy Advance. I was pretty sad to see this level ported over. I almost facepalmed because it just doesn't work with this control scheme. Some levels are original, so while I do give them credit for trying to bring over as much as possible, you didn't need everything. I think it's a shame too, because scrolling through some footage, I think what comes after Expert 7 looks a lot more reasonable. So it ends up trying to take something from the original to be an accurate port, but ends up keeping a very unfortunate flaw from the first game. The bonus levels are back, and honestly, I really dig them. Almost more than the original game. I feel like the concepts are fun while maintaining an expected sense of challenge. They are also original for difficulty and not reused from mode to mode. I give them tremendous credit for this because I think this is a part of the game that might actually shine over the original. The extra levels are here as well, and they actually are original per mode this time around as well, which is a great touch as opposed to the originals, which often recycled some extra stages. I really do have to give them credit for filling in some of the gaps where the original fell short, even if some of the major things that were unfortunate were kept around. These stages are again gotten to by not using a continue throughout the main game, which applies to all three modes now as opposed to one life in Beginner Advanced as we saw in Super Monkey Ball 1, which is also a nice change, but with how hard this game is, I can't even fathom making it there on anything besides Beginner, and many people won't, but points for it existing, I guess. I also really prefer the ending credits, which is a platformer or like a temple run style of credits instead of kind of just random letters falling from the sky for this one. This might be one of my favorite credits in the entire series. It's simple but fun. I want to say this again, the graphics in this game are like stupidly good. Like when you consider this as a GBA game, suddenly things like the lens glare, the ball movement, and just the backgrounds in general are genuinely so impressive. I might be nerding over this a bit too hard, but I think it's a well done job, so it deserves some praise. The music is exceptional as well, and almost feels like someone who makes like 16-bit versions of songs on YouTube did them, which I think is another sign of a job well done. They are very catchy, and the graphics and music maintain the feel of the original almost perfectly. I think the character models suffer the most, but to be fair, I don't really know how they could have done a 2D sprite in a 3D environment on this console. I think this is why touch and roll style was so strong, because it worked very well with the game's world and console. The characters look blocky, but are still true to form and fun to play as. Playpoints are quite impactful in this version of the game. They are factored from your score in the levels, which meant I grinded the hell out of Advanced and Beginner until I got enough for all the unlockables. It took me like 2 hours.
Then I looked up online, there's a cheat code that just lets you unlock everything and skip all of that.
Yes, this game actually has like cheat codes, or Easter eggs as some would call them, on the main menu. There's nothing too notable. There's a code that makes the game look worse. If you want that for some reason, why is this a code? And some that change the title of the game. It's a nifty touch, and I appreciate that. Since this game could not be one for one with the original, they added some cute little bonus features to make it stand out. The developers had fun with this game, and it does show, which is always happy to see. There is genuine heart and soul in this game, and you could tell it's not just a cash grab, which is my favorite part about it. Anyways, like the original, the minigames are unlocked via these play points at 2,500 points a pop. You can also buy extra continues, which is a nice reward for sticking through the game, and eventually get to an unlimited amount of them, which should make you able to break through stuff like Expert 7 eventually. You can unlock an alternative golf course, and then interestingly enough, you can unlock the Master Mode rather than having to do it by doing Expert without a continue this time.
This is really interesting. I'm pretty mixed on this. I think on one hand, it was a solid reward in the original games that if you played Expert without losing Continue, you could unlock this new, really hard mode. It rewarded you for playing well. On the other hand, this game is so insanely difficult that I don't see how that's obtainable here without going insane. So, yeah, I'm glad.
As I expected, I couldn't make it past level 1, but I'm glad they added something like this anyway. If you can master these controls, you are some higher form of life, and if you beat this mode, which I guess with unlimited continues is like technically doable, I give you so much respect. It's also the only point where we see this lava theme pop up here, which wasn't in Monkey Ball 1, so that's cool. I guess since it's lava, it's hot. I don't have a ton to say about the minigames, but they are quite faithful to the original. Monkey Fight is almost one for one, but the punch sound effects are kind of painful to listen to. It has the crisp, almost Sega Genesis type of noise pop to them. It's really lame to play alone, however, it's definitely meant to be played with friends. Monkey Bowling I think fits better on Junior than the original actually, as it's more desirable for a quick game rather than something you would sit down in front of your TV and play. The triggers still make you turn left and right, but for some reason I just enjoyed this game more here. Monkey Golf is the final minigame, and it's pretty solid. Again, it's a shame we never got a Monkey Golf spin-off game because these golf games are so awesome. Also, no one boos you, you know, and you suck, so it makes me feel a little better about my life. I'm sorry I don't have a ton to say about these. They're just watered down versions of the original, so I think it's fair. They're good, they're fun, play them. This game also has a multiplayer feature, as I mentioned, but unfortunately I don't have anyone who would play this crap with me, and also you need like 4 Game Boys, 4 linked cables, and 4 copies of the game, so I hope you would excuse me for not playing it for this review. I don't have a kidney to sell. I'm sure the multiplayer was fine, I don't know. There's an exclusive minigame for multiplayer being Monkey Duel, which is just competition mode from the first game. I don't really know why they put this with the minigame, since it's more of a main game shenanigan type of thing. It could have just been put next to practice mode, which, oh yeah, practice mode returns as well. I don't have anything to say about it. It's practice mode, choose a level, get good. But yeah, glad it's here.
So, Super Monkey Ball Jr., should you play this game? Honestly, no. I don't think you really miss out on much skipping this game. Like, Super Monkey Ball 1 and its later games are generally the same thing and much more favorable experiences, better controls, better graphics, and obviously the convenience. But when you remember the context of this game, which was that Junior was a game to be played on a handheld in 2002, I think it served a very important purpose. It's not glamorous by today's standards, but it also really doesn't have to be. It's an interesting relic to look at, and while it's not really something that you should sit down and play today, it's a good enough effort where it should be viewed favorably for the series. But yeah, just play 1 and 2. Anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for your support, specifically to the Super Monkey Ball Twitter, which retweeted my first video and followed me, which honestly means the world to me. And thank you to everyone who came in from that video. I'm ramping up production on this series actually due to the overwhelming support. I'm going to try to get a video out every week. That doesn't mean every 7 days necessarily, but if I get a video out on, like, say, Monday, and the next week it's, like, out on Friday, that's kind of what I mean. Next week, we're going to look at Super Monkey Ball 2, one of the best in the series, if not the best. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and follow my socials. Peace. Okay, that ending was, like, not my style at all. I'm probably going to cut that from the video, actually.